All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into one of the most fascinating and honestly terrifying what-if scenarios in all of sci-fi. 10,000 years. That is exactly how long the Imperium of Man has somehow managed to survive without the direct rule of its emperor. I mean, for 10 millennia, humanity's greatest leader has sat absolutely motionless upon the golden throne. He's silent, he's unmoving. Essentially, he's a being who is neither truly alive nor truly dead. And yet, despite that endless silence, every single major institution of this sprawling galactic empire was built around one terrifying assumption. Just let that sink in for a second. The assumption is that the Emperor is never going to wake up. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? Think about it. What if tomorrow, somewhere deep beneath the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra, the master of mankind suddenly just opens his eyes? Would humanity finally be saved? Or would the Imperium discover that it's become something its creator can no longer tolerate? Because according to some highly forbidden theories hidden deep within the Imperial archives, the Emperor's return might not unite humanity at all. In fact, it might trigger the greatest civil war since the Horus Heresy. You know, the apocalyptic rebellion that nearly wiped out humanity in the first place. And the most dangerous enemies wouldn't be alien swarms or demons. No, they would be the Imperium itself. Okay, let's dive into part 1, 10 millennia without a king. So for 10,000 years, the Imperium has existed in a state that would have absolutely horrified its founder. You see, the Emperor originally envisioned a highly rational human civilization. He wanted a galaxy united by science, reason, and human progress. In his empire, religion was strictly forbidden, superstition was mercilessly hunted down, and ignorance was considered the ultimate threat. During the era known as the Great Crusade, entire worlds were conquered and brought into compliance under the strict secular vision. Humanity was meant to stand united beneath an enlightened empire. But then came Horus. The Horus heresy shattered everything. Half the Imperium burned to the ground as the Primarchs, the Emperor's genetically engineered demigod sons, literally turned on each other. Brothers slaughtered brother, and the secular dream burned right along with them. Which brings us to part 2, a civilization of survival. When that horrific galactic civil war finally ended, the Emperor's shattered body was placed on life support upon the Golden Throne. Humanity survived, sure, but the dream died completely. And as centuries bled into millennia, the Imperium transformed into something entirely different. It became a civilization built completely around brute survival rather than progress or enlightenment. To give you a sense of this nightmare, it turned into a bureaucracy so impossibly vast that entire planets, literally billions of people, simply disappeared from the records due to administrative typos. It became a military machine fighting a desperate, constant war just to stave off extinction. And most importantly, it became a religion. The Emperor, the very man who once violently rejected worship, became the absolute center of the largest faith in human history. Just think about the sheer scale of this for a moment. We're talking upwards of 10 quadrillion humans. Billions became trillions, and trillions became quadrillions. Entire worlds dedicating every waking moment of their existence to praising the God Emperor. This wasn't just some minor cultural shift over time either. It became the fundamental glue holding the fragmented Imperium together. And well, that is exactly where the real problem begins. Because if he wakes up, what happens when he discovers that humanity spent 10,000 years doing exactly what he explicitly told them never to do? That leads us right into part 3, the internal institutional crisis. Imagine the very first hours after his awakening. The Adeptus Custodes, his elite golden-armored bodyguards, they would likely be the first to know. Not the ruling High Lords, not the Inquisition, not even the state church, the Ecclesiarchy. The Custodes have guarded the Emperor since before the Imperium even existed. To them, the Emperor is not a god. He is their king, their commander, and their creator. And suddenly, after 10,000 years of complete silence, he's giving orders again, orders that nobody can predict, orders that could instantly overturn the entire imperial power structure. Because you see, the modern Imperium doesn't actually function through the Emperor anymore. It functions through competing institutions. You've got the politicians of the High Lords, the priests of the Ecclesiarchy, the bureaucrats of the Administratum, the secret police of the Inquisition, and the cyborg engineers of the Mechanicus. Countless organizations perpetually balancing power against one another. Every single one of those factions claims to serve him, but many have accumulated enormous influence during his absence, influence they might not willingly surrender. And then comes the question, literally, nobody wants to ask. What if the Emperor doesn't approve of what humanity has become? The Ecclesiarchy faces the greatest threat here. The entire imperial cult is built on the belief that he's divine, but the Emperor himself repeatedly denied being a god. Imagine the shockwave. Imagine Terra broadcasting a galaxy-wide message, "I am not a god." It would be like the Pope suddenly announcing that religion was a mistake. For a lot of citizens, a declaration like that would be completely incomprehensible. Some might reject it entirely, assuming it was a divine test or heresy. Civil unrest could spread across thousands of worlds as governors and priests choose different interpretations. Ironically, the Emperor's return might shatter imperial unity rather than strengthen it. And actually, that's before we even talk about the Inquisition. For 10 millennia, they've operated as the ultimate secret police, purging entire planets, exterminating populations, and bearing deep, dark secrets. Now picture the Emperor waking up and reviewing 10 millennia of their classified files. Would he approve? Probably not. He might discover horrors even he never anticipated. But perhaps the most dangerous pushback wouldn't even come from the Church or the Inquisition. It could come from Mars. The Adeptus Mechanicus controls all of humanity's technology. Many of these tech priests worship the machine god, not the Emperor's secular vision. If the Emperor demands sweeping reforms, they could fight back with logistical warfare, shutting down supply chains, halting forge worlds, and crippling the Empire without ever firing a single shot. Moving on, this brings us to Part 4, Enemies at the Gates. History shows us that empires often collapse from within when their institutions stop cooperating. But external enemies aren't just gonna sit back and watch the show. The moment news spreads, every major faction reacts. The demonic forces of chaos, the ruinous powers, would absolutely panic. For 10,000 years, they've benefited from the Imperium's stagnation. A stronger emperor threatens their influence, meaning traitor legions might launch massive offenses simply because this could be their very last opportunity. And then there's the alien reaction. The Tyranid swarms, they would just keep advancing, unstoppable and hungry. The ancient robotic Necrons might view a restored emperor as a massive existential threat, or perhaps a strategic opportunity. The savage orcs would do what they always do, fight whoever looks the strongest. And the Eldari, the ancient elves of the galaxy, would be frantically studying their prophecies to see what role a fully conscious emperor plays in the future. Which brings us to Part 5, the reality of command. Could the emperor even realistically lead this bloated empire anymore? A lot of people assume yes, but the reality is far more complicated. Half the Imperium has been cut off by warp storms, massive chaotic tears in the fabric of space. Communication delays are enormous. Enemy threats have multiplied. Even with godlike intelligence, You just cannot easily micromanage a million isolated worlds when information travels this slowly. Sure, the Emperor could provide direction, but he can't personally appear on every single battlefield. The fundamental problem remains. The Imperium is simply too large. However, there is one massive wildcard here, Roboute Guilliman. Guilliman is one of the Emperor's original genetically engineered demigod sons who recently awakened. He already understands the absolute nightmare of modern imperial governance, and he has openly struggled with the religious culture surrounding his father. Would father and son agree? Would they clash? Imagine the sheer tension of the Emperor addressing humanity directly through his own voice for the first time in 10 millennia. Every world listens. Every fleet pauses. If he demands immediate radical change, the empire could completely shatter. If he accepts things as they are, his original secular dream dies forever. There's no clean victory here, folks, only profound and terrifying consequences. Which leads us to our final point, Part 6, the final terrifying question. The most realistic outcome of his return isn't instant salvation. It's decades of brutal political, military, and religious transformation. The Imperium would likely survive, sure, but it would emerge fundamentally altered. But there's one final implication that almost no one talks about. What if the Emperor wakes up because he no longer needs the Golden Throne? What if his awakening signals that something has fundamentally changed within the warp itself? For 10,000 years, the Emperor's psychic presence has protected humanity, guiding ships through the warp, holding back demonic horrors, maintaining a very, very fragile stability. If he stands up, who takes over those responsibilities? Can anyone? Or do we discover that the Golden Throne was never just a life support system? What if it was a lock? And what if something has been violently pressing against that lock from the other side for 10,000 years? Because in the end, the Emperor waking up might not even be the most important event. The most important question is why it happened. Was humanity finally saved? Or was he forced to awaken because a threat greater than Horus, greater than chaos, and greater than literally anything in human history is finally at the door? Is this the return of a savior?